The concept of feminine energy is extremely misunderstood. And a lot of that has to do with how deeply rejected and suppressed feminine energy is in our modern culture and world. And I want to get into a little bit deeper why that is in this video. But first, I want to start with kind of going over what people mistakenly think feminine energy is. So, the term that you hear thrown around most often in relation to feminine energy is submissive. And the term submissive kind of implies a lack of agency. It implies that the feminine is subjugated to the masculine in some capacity. And along with that idea comes the idea of the feminine as always being agreeable, always being kind, being passive, being overly emotional, right? So these are the kind of concepts that often get tied to what it means to be a woman and what it means to be in your feminine energy, right? And then within media, especially in social media, we often see these caricatures of femininity created like these one-dimensional characters that define feminine energy. And it kind of is a representation in a way of the Madonna whore complex, because we see these kind of different versions of these two characters. So we have the over sexualized, hypersexual seductress, right? And that caricature obviously exists for the male gaze. It exists for male consumption, right? And it's been kind of packaged around this idea of like female empowerment. And there's a lot that we could unpack there in the ways that like women have kind of been convinced to think that like hypersexuality is empowering in some capacity. But there's a lot of illusion wrapped up in that as well. And then on the other side, we have kind of like the virginal form of femininity, whether it's like performing the trad wife ideal, or it's like, the soft girl, or the cottage core, or whatever the different aesthetics like on TikTok for femininity that are all like these like hyper feminine, like soft, and they're all built around like how you speak or what you wear. And it's like these are very one-dimensional depictions of femininity, when in actuality, femininity and feminine energy and the embodiment of feminine energy is it's literally the depth within all of us, right? So there's so many different aspects like and facets to what makes up feminine energy and the femininity within the self, right? But I think because this has been, the power of the feminine has been, you know kind of hidden away and tried to they've tried to control the power of the feminine for so long. It's like they've created these neat little boxes where they're like, women have these different options of how to like express and embody feminine energy, and all of them are sort of like this weakening and this dampening down and this disempowerment really of what feminine energy truly is. So when we're talking about what femininity actually is and what feminine energy actually is, I want to use the Empress from the tarot as just kind of like a visual representation of a woman truly in her power. She is the full embodiment of feminine energy, and she is the full embodiment of the four main archetypes of feminine energy. And if you watched my previous video, the Emperor, I did the same thing for masculine energy. So the Emperor was like the representation of the masculine when he is embodying the four main archetypes of masculinity. And so now we're going to break down the four main archetypes of femininity. So the first one is the maiden. And actually, before I even get into breaking down the four of them, I want to say that feminine energy is all about the natural cycles and rhythms of life, right? And so just to be in a feminine energied body means to experience life in cycles, right? And so when we're talking about these four main archetypes, it's not a linear process of like you experience this and then you experience this and then you experience this. Many women experience cycling through these archetypes every month, right? This is, sometimes you are embodying one of these archetypes more for a particular season of your life that you're in, but then you cycle into the next, or maybe you cycle back to something. And so it's not linear. We all embody each of these archetypes within ourselves always. Okay. So the first one is the maiden. And the maiden is associated with the spring season. And in the tarot, if we're talking about the four main representations of feminine energy in the tarot, the one that closely connects to the maiden is the Queen of Wands. So the Queen of Wands is the spiritual aspect of the feminine. The Wands energy is the fire aspect. And so it's like this energy of rebirth, birthing the new beginnings. This is the energy that's connected with the new moon in the moon cycle. And so when we're talking about the maiden, this is all about like the creation of something new. It's about innocence, creativity, playfulness, right? Like kind of like that, the inner child, the childlike nature within the self. And like I said, like, yes, of course, we experience the season in our life of childhood and young adulthood and adolescence, but we never lose those parts of ourselves, right? So like those parts of ourselves, they move forward with us as we cycle into new seasons. So the shadow side, when we're talking about the different archetypes, there's always like this polarity of like, are we over indulging or over expressing into one aspect of ourself, or are we under expressing? And so everything, all these archetypes exist on a spectrum, right? And so the shadow aspects of the maiden are naivety, right? So not making good decisions because you lack awareness, or you're naive, you're gullible, things like that. You haven't learned those lessons. And so there's like a vulnerability in that. It's like vulnerability without strength, without boundaries, without protection. And then there's also the idea of dependency, right? So like if you're too much in this maiden energy, there's that lack of agency, right? Like that inability to self-actualize and create worlds and life and stability for yourself. So the next archetype is the mother, and the mother is connected with the season of summer. And so this would also be the full moon, right? So when the moon is full, she's abundant, she's fertile. And these are kind of the qualities of the mother, right? Like nurturing, the idea of abundance, right? So like abundance is the creation of life. And when we're talking about being a mother, you can be a mother in so many different ways, right? And so because we're talking about energy here, right? Like we're talking about your ability to create in the world, right? And so you can birth projects, you can birth a home, you can birth so many different things, like so many things that are at one point of vision inside of you, you can birth into life and into existence. And that is your creative life force energy. That is the mother energy within all of us. And so the mother energy is when you are, focused beyond just yourself, right? So there's a focus on community, whether it's family, whether it's the community that you've built around you. The mother energy is the embodiment of just being able to love and share support for others. And so when we're talking about the mother energy, the representation in the tarot would be the Queen of Cups. And the Queen of Cups is, emotional energy connected to the energy of the heart. It's that energy of like the emotional waters, the waters of the sacral chakra, which is, our womb space. So it's like being in that flow of energy. And the shadow side of the mother is martyrdom, right? So overgiving of the self, self-sacrifice. So when you are putting others before yourself, and you are falling to the wayside because you're overgiving, right? Codependency, and also being in a controlling state, right? So we can often see like unhealthy representations of the mother expressing itself as like domineering or controlling, and not allowing yourself to surrender into that flow state. The third archetype is the wild woman or the enchantress, and this is connected with the season of autumn. And the energy of the wild woman or the enchantress is all about your intuition. And so this is like tapping into those higher realms, those higher visions, higher energy. So when we're talking about masculine energy is often associated with the lower chakras, which is our physical, tangible being. And when we're talking about feminine energy, this is more associated with the upper chakras, which is going to be our intuition, our vision. And when we're talking about the wild woman and the high priestess and the enchantress, this is all about being rebellious. This is all about connecting into that wild nature within the self. So the wild nature is passionate, right? The wild nature within the self breaks the rules, taps into your own inner magic, your inner knowing, because that is what feminine energy is like truly that intuitive state. Like everyone's kind of heard of that, like a woman's intuition, right? And you can see this like embodied in the mother too, right? Like the mother has the instincts of like how to raise the child and how to protect the child and all these types of things. The wild woman, the enchantress, also embodies the idea of destruction, which is very much an aspect of feminine energy, is being the destroyer. So we have to destroy in order to create space for what is new. And this is a very important part of the cycle of femininity, is like breaking down what isn't working. So like, you know, if we were to look at this as like the woman's cycle, there's like the breaking down of what needs to be cleared out so that a new cycle can begin, right? And so that is very much part of the feminine energy embodiment, is being able to embody that sort of like the chaos, the letting go, right? And so when we relate this to the tarot, this would be the Queen of Pentacles. The Queen of Pentacles is, you know, earth energy. And so we're talking about connection to, and this is also like the waning moon. So we're talking about connection to the energy of the earth. We're talking about connection to the energy of the moon. And the shadow aspects of that are, you know, going too far into the destruction and the chaos, right? So like abandoning all other reason or all other connection to the other three archetypes, and just going too far into this sort of like reckless abandon, right? And then there can also be aspects of like resentment or jealousy within this archetype. So like, you know, that's where that kind of like that intuitive nature, it's like, where are we learning how to channel that energy in positive ways and not destructive ways, right? So the fourth archetype is the crone, and the crone is connected with the dark moon. So when the moon is completely right before a new moon, right? And this is connected with the season of winter. And the crone is all about the energy of wisdom. So this is like the wise older woman, right? It's the energy of being reflective, contemplative, introspective, right? So these are like really important aspects of feminine energy. It's like learning how to integrate life's experiences, learning how to be a guide, a wisdom holder, a teacher, providing perspective. It's the bridge between the human world and the spiritual world, right? So this in the tarot, this archetype would be connected to the Queen of Swords. The Queen of Swords is the air energy, which is the intellect, right? So that's like that deeper awareness of our intuition, and our wisdom and our thoughts and connection to the spiritual world, right? So on the shadow side of that, there's, you know, isolation that can come with that. So sometimes like being the holder of like really deep understanding and deep wisdom can isolate you from the rest of the world. There's also the potential to be bitter or to be judgmental, right? Like, because there's kind of that shadow side of like knowing too much, right? So, those are the four main archetypes of femininity. And when we're talking, the four main archetypes of feminine energy, I should say. And when we're talking about how to strengthen and develop your feminine energy, one of the most important ways that you can do that is to learn how to receive. So, whether this is receiving help from other people, allowing yourself to receive help. Maybe it's learning how to receive a compliment, right? A lot of people struggle with that, where it's like someone gives you a compliment and immediately, like, if they're like, oh, I like your shirt, you're like, oh, I like yours too, right? It's like learning how to just be like, thank you, taking that energy and receiving it, and allowing it to integrate, right? So like if someone says to you, you have such beautiful hair, and you sit with that and you take that in and you're like, I do have beautiful hair or whatever, that's, you're actually receiving the energy versus just being like, oh, so do you, and like throwing it back to somebody, right? So this is like a big part of embodying this energy of receptivity. A big part of embodying your feminine energy is learning how to slow down, learning how to truly rest. And so when we say rest, this means actually truly learning to relax the nervous system. So noticing how even if in your resting state you are always doing something, or maybe you're on the phone and you're scrolling, like that's still very much like the nervous system is processing a lot of energy when you're doing that. And so it's like learning how to truly slow down and be still. And you know, a lot of times, because I am a yoga teacher, people go to yoga classes and things like that to help with that. But sometimes what ends up happening is we still end up like kind of thrill seeking, right? Where we're like, I need to move faster. I need to go harder. I need to be doing more arm balances, or I need to be doing more chaturangas, or whatever it is. And it's like, let your practice, like those kinds of practices, actually just be a practice in like learning how to be still, or like, you know, just learning how to be present with yourself. Like this is practicing feminine energy, right? So learning how to be present, and also learning how to be in touch with your emotions. And this is a difficult one, because being in touch with your emotions is different than intellectualizing your emotions. And intellectualizing things is very much an aspect of your masculine energy. So learning how to be with your feminine energy is learning how to feel your emotions versus just thinking your emotions, right? So part of that too is getting in touch with your body. And so learning how to listen to your body, because your body is always speaking to you, always. Even just your cycle that you go through, if you do experience a cycle, it's showing you what needs to be released, what needs to be let go of, what is it that you're processing, what is your body asking of you. It's like there's so many ways to become intuitive with the body, whether it's like noticing what foods work for you and don't work for you and starting to eat intuitively. Maybe it's changing your sleep schedule and making sure that you are getting solid quality sleep every night, right? Like it's learning to love the body, to nurture the body, to take care of the body. And if we go back to kind of what I was saying at the beginning, the ways that the feminine has been rejected and suppressed and controlled, I did do a video touching on this a little bit, where I was kind of talking about the difference between matriarchy and patriarchy, and kind of how we've ended up in sort of like this patriarchal world that we live in. But there's so much more to say on that, and so much more I'm sure I will eventually end up saying on the channel. But to kind of go into that in relation to what we're talking about right now, there are so many ways that the feminine has been, you know, just suppressed. And I know that this is probably something that may be controversial, but you have to look at certain decisions that you've been influenced and encouraged to make. So, for example, things like doing Botox, everyone has the right to decide whether that's right for them, right? And when you're choosing to do something and there's intention behind it, then great, like be committed to that choice that you've made for whatever reason. But also just be aware of the ways in which women have been convinced that they only have value in the world for a certain period of time, the ways that women have are constantly being convinced that they are not good enough, that they need to buy more things, that they need to spend more money, that they need to change how they look. And so just noticing if you've been influence to do things like that, just become aware of what it is that you're doing. So, like, your third eye center, the seat of your intuition, sits between your two eyes. This is your pineal gland, right? And so, when you are injecting toxins, neurotoxins into your head, just think about why you've been convinced that you need to do that. That's all that I'm suggesting. And I can make the same suggestion when it comes to things like birth control, right? So, yes, there is very much a time and a place for the invention of these things and the necessity of these things. And some people absolutely need them for medical reasons. I'm not arguing that. But just look at the potential long-term effects of disrupting women's hormonal systems, which is your connection to your cycle. And again, the body, as you know, the body is our receptor, our how we attune ourselves to nature and to the world. And so if we're taking something every single day of our life for decades on end that is disrupting that natural rhythm, it's just asking the questions like, what is this doing to me long term? How is this potentially separating me from my power and my connection to my body? Just ask these questions, right? Because when you zoom out and you look at the bigger picture, the power of the feminine is the power to create life. It is the power to attune to God, to the spiritual, to be a vessel for creation and for life. And the powers that be, they know this and they have known this. And there's been a lot of different ways that they've attempted to take that power for themselves. And I think that that is where I will leave that for today. But when we're talking about how to strengthen your feminine energy, it's like, learn to love yourself. Learn to look in the mirror and love yourself in every iteration. Learn how to pour love into everything that you do, whether it's the way you brush your hair, it's the way you put lotion on your body. Like, those actions activate the light, the beauty, all of the most feminine aspects of yourself within you, right? So, getting in touch with the body, getting in touch with your creative expression, letting all of life be an expression from the heart, right? Like, how can you make life around you beautiful? How can you make life around you a life that brings you joy and happiness and pleasure, right? Spend time in beautiful places, spend time in nature. Like, this is so important for cultivating the connection to the feminine, is spending time in nature, getting in touch with the natural rhythms of the world around you so that you can get in touch with your own natural rhythms, right? Practice your intuition, practice getting in touch with your intuition, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through pattern recognition. So you start to notice and take notice of, like, you know, maybe there was a time that your intuition alerted you to something and you ignored it. Write that down and remember it, and remember the ways your intuition spoke to you so that you can then the next time, identify it and not ignore it, right? So we start to notice the patterns, notice the way that your body speaks to you, notice the way that your intuition speaks to you, notice the way that the world around you speaks to you, right? And start to trust yourself. This is such a big one, learning to trust yourself and your intuition. Setting boundaries and raising standards. This is, you know, an aspect of both masculine and feminine energy, right? So like we can't, if feminine energy is the container, is the space holder, it's the void space, we have to define the terms of the container, right? Um, Emotional regulation and not suppression. So learning how to navigate your emotional experience without letting your emotions, control you and make you out of control, but also without suppressing and rejecting so that they're kind of, running the show from behind the scenes from deep in the subconscious, right? And then just learning how to trust and allow and let yourself flow with life, right? So that is really the embodiment of feminine energy, is being in the flow, being in your flow state. I often say in my yoga classes, like something I'll say a lot, is that you create a lot more space by letting go instead of forcing in. And if you think about this like from a physical perspective, like if you're trying to attain a certain stretch or a certain position in the body, forcing yourself into something is like potentially, going to lead to injury. It's going to, force the body into something that maybe it wasn't ready for. But when you focus on letting go and your focus is just on accepting exactly where you're at and like breathing more deeply and like seeing if like, oh, maybe I'm tensing in my hip joints and I didn't even notice it, and now I've noticed it, I can relax it. It's like that space, that, giving yourself the time and the space to relax into something lets the body kind of sink deeper into the stretch. And that really is the foundation of yin yoga in and of itself. And yin yoga is the feminine aspect versus yang, right? So yin yoga is all about like staying in a pose for like 7 minutes so that like you move past that initial reaction in the mind and the body to the stretch, and you let yourself just kind of sink into it and observe the mind, observe the body. It's like this is something that is so missing from our culture, our society, our world, is the space for integration. It's like we're constantly in this rush. Like everyone has to be rushing to get to the next thing and rushing to buy the next thing and rushing. And that is the denial completely of the feminine aspect within the self. It's like learning how to just slow down and take your time and like integrate what you've already experienced so that you can learn from it, integrate your intuition, integrate like knowledge and wisdom so that you can expand from there, right? And I'm going to get, in my next video, I'm going to get deeper into how the masculine and the feminine exist within all of us, right? And how these energies, in being able to embody both of these aspects of yourself, creates this idea of inner union within the self, and how inner union within the self ultimately leads to outer union, whether it's, just union and harmony with life around you, or whether it's union and harmony in the relationships that you experience in life, right? So I think I'm going to leave that there, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk with you again soon.